Good afternoon. My name is Lowell Wise. I'm Executive Director of Tacoma Tree Foundation, and we're really excited to have you here for this lunch and learn today with Earth Economics. Um, as we get started, we're going to share a few logistics with you and a little bit about who we are. You probably know because you found your way here, but we're Tacoma Tree Foundation, and our mission has to do with growing community stewardship of the urban forest across Greater Tacoma through planting, education, and advocacy. And today's talk is on the education side. So we're really honored to be serving in this role in the community and working towards equity in the urban forest. Um, Couple of things on this webinar. We're set up like a webinar today and not a meeting. So we encourage you to ask questions, but we're going to hold your questions until the end. And please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen to send those questions. And we'll make sure to leave some time at the end of the webinar to get to some of those. I'm going to read the questions out loud and our presenters will respond. The chat function is off. I believe you can send us chats to just the presenters if there's a technical issue or anything. Um, and we'll just ask for your patience in case we deal with any logistics like screen sharing being an issue today. Um, and I believe we're recording this session, so just keep that in mind as well. We're going to have the presentation available on our YouTube channel after the event. I want to start off by acknowledging where we live and work. We acknowledge that our work takes place on Indigenous land. Despite generations of violence, Coast Salish peoples still live here, practice their cultures, and care for these lands and waters. We honor and respect the sovereignty of all tribal nations, both here and around the world. Our urban area was and is being built by immigrants and people of color whose labor and cultural contributions to the modern identity of Greater Tacoma we also recognize. And with that, we want to mention that we have this YouTube page with other educational items, including our most recent State of the Urban Forest event that happened back in November. You can find lots of resources on our YouTube page. And then in terms of upcoming events, we've got a really big, exciting day coming up in February. On February 21st, we are planting trees in the South End neighborhood along the corridors that kids use to walk and bike to school. So this is a new project for us, and it's in partnership with the city of Tacoma and funded by a federal U.S. Forest Service grant through administered through the state of Washington. So we're really proud of this work and invite everyone to sign up to volunteer. You can go to tacomatreefoundation.org/volunteer to learn more and to join us. And then on the education side, we have a presentation coming up on February 18th with Sarah Lowe. We're calling it Spring Awakenings. And this one's going to happen at the Fern Hill branch of the Tacoma Public Library. Um, Today, we're going to be hearing from our friends at Earth Economics. And I want to just share a little bit of background before I introduce them. This photo is from a picture or from an event that happened in the fall of 2023 in the McKinley Hill neighborhood. And this is our Green Blocks program. And the Green Blocks program focuses on lowering barriers to trees in neighborhoods. We know that in Tacoma, the tree canopy is not distributed equitably, and our Green Blocks program focuses on the neighborhoods that need trees the most based on tree data, economic data, social data, etc. We've always really wanted to learn more about the impacts of this program and programs like it. And so we got together with Earth Economics, our presenters today, and we asked them, can you help us quantify the value of street trees? And so we shared some basic data with them. They crunched a lot of numbers, and they've come up with an analysis that's really exciting that helps us to get closer to this question of what is the value of trees in a community. So I wanted to share this photo with you as a way of getting started. This photo shows our staff and our volunteers standing alongside a homeowner who seems really excited to have a tree and maybe couldn't have done it by themselves to plant a tree requires a lot of energy, a lot of technical know-how, and layers of bureaucracy like permitting and calling for utilities. And we're so excited at the Tree Foundation that we can help people navigate those barriers alongside our government partners. So this is just a background on the program from my perspective, and I'm going to turn it over here shortly to our presenters. So today we have with us Olivia Molden. Olivia is a project director who supports Indigenous-led and community-based solutions through project management and research. Olivia has a PhD in geography and enjoys taking the scenic route and sharing her love for Sri Lanka, where she grew up. We also have with us Carson Risner, and Carson is a senior research analyst who specializes in environmental evaluation and geospatial economics with a background in resource management, policy analysis, and geography. Carson enjoys fishing, classic cars, and playing guitar. So with that, I'll turn it over to our presenters, and there will be a little transition here where we switch who's sharing the screen. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Lowell, for the introduction and for having us. We're so happy to be here and to present on the work. And yeah, I think we're based in Tacoma, and we've been around since 1998, but we don't often get to do work in Tacoma. So it's really such a pleasure to be able to support Tacoma through this. Can you go to the next slide, Carson? Thank you. So in this talk today, we're just going to share a little bit about the partnership between Earth Economics and the Tacoma Tree Foundation. And then Carson is really going to give you an introduction to ecosystem services valuation and benefit cost analysis. And then we'll get into the results of the work. So get a little background into ecological economics. And so our organization, we have our mission and value, a vision here, but we're basically a small nonprofit dedicated to raising awareness and showing the value that nature provides. Because traditionally, and in many conventional sort of decision making, the benefits that we receive from ecosystem services or from nature are often excluded. And by including those benefits, we can really provide a more holistic idea of community well-being and show that nature-based solutions can be very cost-effective, as we'll show in this presentation. So I'll just give a quick introduction to this partnership. So the work we did with the Tacoma Tree Foundation was supported by the Ingrid Rasch Legacy Fund, which was started in 2022. And it enables us to provide technical assistance to community groups. And we're just so pleased that we were able to work with the Tacoma Tree Foundation as one of the awardees of this foundation. So most of our work, though, with community groups happens through the Kresge Foundation through this CRUISE, Climate Resilient and Equitable Water Systems Coalition. And together over 13 years, we've been able to provide support to 41 groups to help them advance their nature-based solutions in their communities across the country. And I'd be happy to share some examples of those as well. But I will now pass it over to Carson, who's going to go over the analysis. Oh, yeah, you can skip that one, Carson. Go ahead.
Perfect. Sorry about that.
I'll share the link.
Sounds good. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Olivia. So we'll go into our ecosystem service primer right now. So before we dive into the analysis, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So what are ecosystem services? Simply put, ecosystem services are the quantifiable benefits that humans receive from nature, as Olivia stated. Ecosystem services are essential to human survival. Some examples include breathable air, drinkable water, food production, and disaster mitigation, to name a few. So this graphic provides a clear example of how natural features, also termed natural capital, provide ecosystem functions that result in benefits to people. So the Here you can see that the forests clean and filter water through their natural processes, and this flow to people in the form of drinkable water. This flow of potable water is the ecosystem service being provided. So, natural capital and ecosystem services are oftenly mistaken as synonyms. They are connected, but they are distinctly different. So it is the ecosystem naturally functions, but it's that flow of goods and services that people receive is what the ecosystem services actually are. So ecosystem services can be categorized in many ways. For example, existing frameworks include the Millennial Ecosystem Service Framework or the National Ecosystem Service Classification System. However, at Earth Economics, we blended multiple frameworks into our own custom one. We identify 21 unique ecosystem services, which can be organized into four broad categories, including provisioning, regulating, supporting, and community/informing services. Provisioning services, as you can see here, are the material goods that we obtain from nature. So these services are often considered extractive because they involve removing something from an ecosystem for human use. These goods are typically the most straightforward to value economically because they're often traded in markets. This includes raw materials such as lumber, harvestable food such as berries or wild game, and medicinal resources derived from plants. Regulating services, on the other hand, are benefits obtained from the regulation of ecosystem processes. Unlike provisioning services, which are physical goods, regulating services are the processes that make it possible for other ecosystem services to exist. They indirectly provide a benefit to humans by moderating natural phenomena and creating stable, healthy environments. Think of them as the behind the scenes work that keeps the planet systems running smoothly. Some examples include climate regulation, such as carbon sequestration, cooling, flood regulation, or even pollination. Supporting services are the fundamental natural processes that are necessary for the existence of all other ecosystem services. They are functions that maintain the health and structure of ecosystems, but do not directly benefit humans in the way that it's easily measured or valued. Think of them as kind of the foundational infrastructure of the world. Some of these services include nutrient cycling, soil formation, photosynthesis, and habitat provision. Finally, community services are the non-material benefits that people attain from ecosystems. These services enrich our lives by providing opportunities for recreation, reflection, and spiritual experiences. They don't involve a physical product or a regulatory process, but are instead tied to the human experience and our relationship with nature. Since these services are tied with how each individual interacts with that nature, they are often the most difficult to value in terms of monetary dollars. So this image provides real-world examples of the four ecosystem service categories that we just reviewed. It's important to note that not a single landscape can provide multiple services across ecosystem service categories. So this gives you a visual connection between the theoretical definition and the tangible examples. Here we can see that cultivated lands provide access to local food systems. They serve as tourist destinations, as well as provide habitat for migratory bird populations. Rivers and lakes provide water to people and wildlife, serve as habitat for aquatic species, enable recreation such as hiking or marine activities, and can be places of cultural retreat for different groups. Wetlands store, regulate, and the flows of water and also mitigate downstream flood risks and provide habitat for many different species as well. Understanding how different landscape impacts people's lives is the beginning to creating solutions that benefit people, the environment, and the economy. So how are these things valued? There's really two basic ways that we can go about this. Either we go out and collect brand new research and data, or we use research that people have already done. When we collect new information, we can use surveys, interviews to ask people about their values or the behaviors to directly observe people's purchasing habits or by running experiments and tests to measure outcomes. The second approach is similar to like being a detective, where we look for studies and research that's already been published, and we use their findings and apply it to similar contexts. So we're working with data that already exists, but we might be looking at it from a new way or a different angle or combining them in new, unique ways. So at Earth Economics, we use the benefit transfer method, which is a secondary method. And this really is due to the rapid ability to defensively quantify and monetize ecosystem service benefits. So when you're using a benefit transfer method, there's a lot to consider when choosing which values are appropriate to transfer from one location to another. We have to ensure that the site attributes and the context of the literature being used and transferred to another location fit that target site. So this is an established and accepted methodology for over the last 30 years, and many academics and government agencies have developed best practices and standards over the years that we also follow. A good analogy for a benefit transfer analysis is akin to a property appraisal. When someone appraises your house, they don't look at just your house. They study the surrounding neighborhood and the homes within them, and they look at similar houses that sold recently. And essentially, we do that with ecosystems. We take the research that's already been done and apply it to a place that we're trying to value. It's much faster and cheaper than starting from scratch. So in other words, we can use benefit transfer in situations where we need more rapid answers for a lot of services across many ecosystems all at once. Ecosystem service valuation can be integrated into decision-making frameworks, such as a benefit cost analysis. A benefit cost analysis compares the lifetime benefits and costs of a project to ensure that investments are given to the most effective solutions. The primary output of an analysis like this is the benefit cost ratio, which estimates the anticipated return on investment. The benefit cost ratio estimates the total value of benefits received for every dollar invested into a project. So it's really that cost effectiveness. Traditionally, since ecosystem services are provided by free, or many of them are provided for free, they've typically been excluded from decision-making frameworks like a benefit cost analysis, and this can lead to ineffective decision-making as the value of solutions that utilize or mimic natural processes are not well represented. Earth economics makes the case for nature and nature-based solutions by integrating ecosystem service valuations into benefit cost analyses. Now that we kind of have a common understanding of ecosystem services and their role in decision-making processes, we can actually turn to the analysis that we completed. So we conducted a benefit cost analysis to value the benefits provided by Tacoma Tree Foundation street tree plantings. In 2023, they planted about 228 new trees in McKinley Hill area to expand Tacoma's urban forest cover and improve the social and environmental elements of these neighborhoods. Using an ecosystem service framework, we were able to communicate the social, environmental, and economic benefits of these trees. Data such as this can be compelling and further the case for additional tree plantings within Tacoma. Now let's get into the specifics. Trees provide significant benefits such as clean air, water, mitigate urban heat islands, beautify neighborhoods, and sequester carbon, just to name a few. As trees grow, their biophysical capabilities also expand, thus providing more benefits each year after planting. To account for this, we used the USDA's Urban Tree Database and allometric equations. This database provides statistical equations that can be used to estimate the growth of trees throughout time, including the total canopy area that can be expected. These equations are species and regionally specific to account for different growth rates and environmental conditions. We identified the 12 most common tree species planted in Tacoma, and we modeled each of the 228 tree species total canopy cover in each year. So this graph shows the estimated total acres of canopy cover associated with those trees over a 50-year timeline. As you can see, growth is relatively steep in the beginning years and kind of fades out towards the later years. Now on to the valuation. So to value these ecosystem services, Earth Economics used the benefit transfer methods mentioned earlier, as well as our proprietary database of standardized ecosystem service values, our own urban heat island mitigation tool, which estimates the number of the cooling potential of trees and the associated avoided mortalities, as well as hospitalizations related to extreme heat events, as well as the iTree software. So a little bit about Earth Economics database. It includes about 10,000 ecosystem services, each tagged with up to 200 attributes, such as ecosystem service or ecosystem type, location, proximity to urban areas, climate type, and more. These attributes enable researchers to determine what values can be defensively transferred to the study site. In this case, we selected urban forest values. Our urban heat island tool, like I said before, estimates the cooling potential and the subsequent reduction in extreme heat days and heat-related fatalities and hospitalizations. Whereas iTree is a free and open use software that estimates the value of three ecosystem services, including air quality, water quality, and carbon sequestration. Since iTree provides values that are species specific, they provide really reliable outputs, and so we thought that they were should be included in this analysis as well. All of these data points were then standardized to the dollars per acre per year to enable easily scaling to the total canopy cover in a given year. So these standardized values were then scaled to the total canopy area associated with these 228 trees. The benefits and costs were projected over a 50-year timeline and discounted at 2% to enable the comparison of dollars throughout time. We worked with Tacoma Tree Foundation to estimate total planting costs as well as maintenance costs. We estimated that the total cost to plant these trees was upwards of $100,000, and these costs are assumed to be paid in project year one. Trees also must be maintained each year to ensure survivability. We estimated that it could cost about $15,000 each year to care for these trees. This cost is assumed to be incurred between project years 2 up to project year 50. Overall planting and maintenance costs are estimated to be about $585,000 over the project lifetime. So now to the good stuff. This is the results. Our analysis finds that these tree plantings will provide about $8.41 million between 2023 to 2072. The net present value, which is the benefits minus costs, is estimated to be 7.82 million. So that just shows that the project provides significantly more benefits than costs. This is also reflected by a positive benefit cost ratio, or the benefits divided by costs. Our analysis estimated that these tree plantings provide about $14.50 for every dollar invested, showing significant returns on investments. This signals that tree plantings are a sound investment and should be expanded throughout the city. Trees provide substantial ecosystem services, including aesthetic information. So think of that as kind of the beautification of your neighborhood and resulting impacts to property values, water quality, and carbon sequestration. However, most of the value in this analysis was driven by their contribution to regulating local temperatures and reducing the number of extreme heat days each year within these communities. Each year, on average, these trees are expected to provide $147,000 in urban heat island mitigation benefits, while other ecosystem services provide an additional $21,000 each year. Over the project lifetime, this equates to be about $7.3 million in health benefits associated with the reduction in urban heat, as well as about $1 million in those other mentioned services. Here are the estimated avoided mortalities and morbidities from the reduction of urban heat island events. So essentially what we do to value these is we use the EPA's value of a statistical life to value the avoided mortalities, and then the average cost of hospitalizations to account for the avoided hospitalization costs. Here is a breakdown of value per ecosystem service provided. So as you can see that the climate stability or the urban heat island mitigation is the primary driver here, but also other notable ecosystem services include the aesthetic information, which is those impacts to property values, water quality, and energy savings associated with reduction in urban stormwater treatment costs. Overall, we were able to value about 12 unique ecosystem services. Now, I want to mention here that these are conservative estimates. Not all ecosystem services that are known to be provided by trees were able to be quantified and valued within this analysis due to data limitations. And so this just provides a baseline value. However, their true value is likely far greater. This graph shows the total benefits incurred in each year. As you can see by the shape of this curve, tree growth slows over time, as well as the benefits provided. The value that you see being provided in project year one is different than the ending years. And here, this graph just shows the total benefits compared to the total costs. As you can see, the benefits being provided by these trees vastly outpaces the maintenance costs associated with them. And that really leads to that significant positive return on investment. And that's what we have for you. So thank you for attending today, and we hope that the presentation was informative. And if you'd like to learn more about our work or the services we provide, please feel free to reach out to Olivia or myself. And I think we can probably turn it over to questions now.
All right. Thank you, Carson, so much, and Olivia as well. Um, this is really fun. I've been kind of looking at this data as it comes through in over the last several months, and it's fun to see it all put together and presented as you did. So thank you. I'll start off with a question while we're waiting for anyone to in the audience. If you're in the audience, you can submit a question on the Q&A function at the bottom of the page, or the bottom of your Zoom screen, and I will call those out as they come in. Um, so my first question is just about kind of the value that you mentioned, the different types of values. And it seems to me that those are values, like you said, that don't typically show up in a budget, like in a government budget. And so all the information you presented to me makes a great case for the value of trees in the community, but it's a value that doesn't show up in the a balance sheet of a local government necessarily. So I wonder if either of you could speak to how we might share this with government, elected officials, or local leaders, for sort of like how to move beyond a budget view of environmental work.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, like you're saying, these benefits are often invisible in the balance sheet. However, some services are more tangible than others. For example, if you looked at the water quality values, those are technically the avoided cost of water treatment. So, by avoiding additional runoff into your urban stormwater systems, you're avoiding treatment costs. Typically, municipalities are all about their bottom line. Anytime that you can assign an ecosystem service value to an avoided cost, it really helps make that case because it will impact their bottom line. Um, Additionally, health impacts are also huge. Those urban heat island mitigation values are targeted towards vulnerable populations, specifically in this case, elderly populations 65 and plus. So that can also really be a really good talking point for some of those groups. But yeah, I would say the more that you can align an ecosystem service value to an avoided cost, it really makes a big difference. To do that effectively, though, you have to know the methods behind those benefits that were transferred, right? So how were these actually economically valued? We could get into the whole theoretical, ecological economics methods, but to keep it high level, there's stated preference and revealed preference. Everyone likes the revealed preference in terms of it is actual observed behavior or avoided costs. So those values typically tend to be more convincing to those audiences.
Thank you. Still not seeing any questions in the Q&A. If that function is not working for people, you can send us a question using the chat function and just click host and panelists or Tacoma Tree Foundation for who you send the question to. Um, all right, we have a question now from Vivian. How do we educate developers and homeowners about the value trees bring to their projects?
That's a good question. Olivia, do you have any ideas on how we have educated other groups? I'm really the guy in the spreadsheet, so.
Of course, he's so good at the analysis. I think we've never really informed developers so much about the trees yet, at least not directly. But that's a very interesting question to consider. I think, like Carson said, it goes back to really showing those either avoided costs, right? you'll be saving money down the line, or maybe it'll bring in some money. Less likely in this case, but in many of our analyses, we'll look at recreation or aesthetic improvements, right, to property values, for example. Um, so, those are two ways to highlight. I think it really depends on the sort of case by case example that you look at. But for example, in we do a lot of work in New Orleans, and so there, trees are sometimes seen as a risk with strong winds and hurricanes. But really, just raising awareness on all the different benefits that trees can provide, especially if they're planted well and in the right spot, especially for stormwater management, is a huge benefit that it provides down there. So, I think we really work closely with our community partners to see what are the real priorities for folks, and then we often tailor our analysis around those specific needs and interests. But yeah, I'd be very curious to hear about some of the challenges in Tacoma specifically.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I really think the biggest part there is one, getting the word out there like we're doing right now, but then also changing development practices. So when an engineer goes to school, they're presented with a toolbox that of known strategies to address different resilience, issues. Um, Typically they're not educated on nature-based solutions, and so that's never really considered in their mind. So one, providing more tools into their toolbox is step two, I would say. Awareness raising, nature is valuable, right? Two, we need to have practitioners actually using these sort of designs within their work. And then three, also incentivizing it from the top down. So in policy or things along those lines, Washington, D.C. has a oh gosh, it's a runoff charge on your utilities, and you can reduce your utility charges if you install nature-based solutions, or show that you're managing your water locally on site. So those are, I think, the three different ways that I think we can actually start seeing some progress in that area.
Great. Another question I have is, how did this project differ from maybe some analysis you've done sort of out in the forest? Are there any specific challenges when it comes to talking about street trees versus trees out in the forest?
So ecosystem services going back, it's the benefits that people receive. So by having nature and green features within a highly dense urban area, makes the case for the direct recipients of those services. So if you had, trees up in the headwaters, it's probably not impacting people's urban heat island mitigation or events, right? So yes, you're getting the water quality benefits, the water supply benefits, but it's always about how does that flow to people. So by placing these green infrastructure features near people, we're just further bolstering that value that's being provided.
Great. All right, Vivian has another question. Is there a way to value an individual tree? How did you approach kind of this group of trees that we gave you versus just like one single tree?
Yeah, so fundamentally, it's the same process. If you want to be super specific, it would be great if you knew the species of tree, line that up with those urban tree database that I mentioned earlier, model growth through time. The biggest provider of services is usually through the tree's canopy. So modeling tree canopy is a very pragmatic approach. And then from there, if you don't have access to a database like Earth Economics, you know, um, proprietary database, what you can do is use free tools like iTree Design or iTree Eco, which do provide species-specific values. It's just limited to only three of them. You could do a benefit transfer yourself, but once again, that takes kind of the knowledge behind the scenes, right? So how is this being valued? Is it appropriate to transfer from one location to another? But fundamentally, it's the same no matter what in terms of if it's one tree or a whole group of trees. Now, there is something to be said for microforests, though, because they function a little differently than an individual tree. They have kind of compounding effects due to the density of their plantings. So we're still working through that internally as well. But I would say yeah, an individual tree versus a group of trees is typically the same process.
Thank you. Okay, Brett says, love the tools in the toolbox, and educating engineers will be super helpful. Where can we access the actual data you spoke to today?
So Earth Economics, it's our proprietary database because that's kind of our meat and potatoes in terms of how we do our work, right? So that isn't publicly available. iTree Design, iTree Eco, those are really easy tools to use that are readily available and free. Um, I th- um, there might be other resources, but I would say the most detailed would be iTree. Um, which also functions on that USDA urban tree database as well. So you can model, it will model the growth of the tree throughout time and the increase in ecosystem service provision. Um, but then once you get, apart from there, you'd have to go to, say Google Scholar and, find a study that said trees, filter, um, let's see, PM 2.5, X amount of pounds per year. And then you could go to the EPA and look through their data, and it will say per ton of 2.5 removed, these are the anticipated health benefits, and it'll give you monetary value. And then you could sort of scale it that way. So looking at the primary literature for biophysical performances, and then aligning those with some type of avoided cost, such as avoided healthcare costs per pollutant, avoided treatment costs per gallon of water. If you can somehow estimate the total gallons of water being infiltrated. Um, so that is essentially what we do. But yeah, it takes a little bit of that know-how and the knowledge of economic valuation methods to actually do that process. And so that's where we step in and provide technical assistance. But that's not to say that you could do it yourself. You just have to be really careful.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I was gonna say too that we're gonna follow up to the with the webinar. Everyone attending, we're gonna send you the fact sheet that Earth Economics put together about this project. And the inputs we gave them were relatively simple. It was a number of trees. It was the cost that we had associated with the project, and then they used all the main tools at their disposal to create the analyses. I don't want to forget to shout out the City of Tacoma, the Community Tree Program here. The Urban Forestry Program at the city is a crucial partner, and they provide the funding to us to be able to do this particular type of street tree planting. So, really grateful for that. And I think, Olivia, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to add that, it's also really important to emphasize that this was a very conservative estimate, and that's partially low because, what you said. We did just a very sort of basic analysis in this case, right? You can do a lot more in-depth look at those avoided costs that Carson mentioned, a lot more research into the specifics of each area. But, just as you can see, there's so many benefits that you can help raise awareness on. So be love some feedback. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us over email too.
Thank you. And Brett says that they're part of the Planning Commission in Tacoma, and that was partly what was behind their question. Um, I wanted to add a question that sort of wasn't addressed in this presentation, but was part of the conversation as we drafted things together. And that has to do with the costs around health and, avoided health costs and avoided fatalities, perhaps, when trees lower temperatures. Presumably, they help with the issue of people dying from extreme heat events. And just connected to that, you mentioned the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, their evaluation of a human life. And I heard in the news this week that they have lowered that number to zero. From an economic standpoint, they're no longer valuing a person's life in the millions of dollars, but $0. And you don't have to comment on that necessarily, but I wanted to hear how you factored in that those assumptions when you were doing these analyses.
Yeah, absolutely. Even in the first place, uh, the statistical value of life is somewhat detached and removed, right? Because life is so precious. However, it's better to assume something has value than assume that it doesn't have any value. And that's why we do what we do, valuing nature. In terms of those assumptions, it's just a place to start out with. Before it was about $10.7 million per statistical life, adjusted to current dollars. Um, but assuming something is zero is just never a good place to start with. So that would be my comment on that.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything, Olivia? You're good. All right. Are there any more questions from the audience? We've got a few minutes left. Give you one last chance here. Well, if not, we can close things out. I wanted to offer my final thought, which is I love seeing these charts where the value of a tree goes up over time. And my answer to the question about city budgets is anytime a city builds any kind of infrastructure, it tends to go down in value immediately as soon as you put it in the ground. So it depreciates and it has more maintenance costs. And trees definitely have maintenance costs, but the value that they have grows over time. And I think that's one of the unique opportunities and unique features of trees and urban forests. So wanted to leave you with that idea. Thanks so much. Maybe we squeeze in one more question here from Georgette. Um, from your research and studies, are you able to determine the most cost-effective trees to plant in Tacoma? So I think this is a species question and a local ecosystem question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I would say based on our project approach, we scaled everything by canopy area. So if you take that assumption and run with it, um, technically it would mean bigger trees provide more value, right? So bigger tree species like an oak would provide significantly more than, say, um, a juniper bush or something like that, right? So that is the conclusion that this analysis would lead you to believe. However, reality is a lot more complex than that. So accounting for tree growth, but also maintenance costs as well. So survivability of different tree species. You wouldn't want to plant a palm tree up here for example. So I would say regionally native species would be a good place to start. Um, and yeah, and then also size would be a consideration, but yeah, other than that, I think there are some guidance provided by the U.S. Forest Service. I think there are some like community tree portfolios or something like that that provide, target species that could be considered for that regional context. So that I think that's where I would start in terms of selecting species.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll just add from our experience, it's all about the right tree in the right place. So if you get a tree for free, that's more cost effective than paying for one. But if you plant it in the wrong place, that might lead to future maintenance problems and costs. So that is going to be a big factor too, maybe even beyond the species. I get really excited when I look at the city of Tacoma's approved street tree list to see a giant sequoia, for example, on that approved list. When you have enough space, the city actually says it's okay to plant a sequoia, and a species like that has just immense benefits over time. So, yeah, if it's going to live a long life and it's going to go grow big, then it has the chance to provide the most benefits and be very cost effective. Well, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Carson. Thank you so much, Olivia. Really proud that we got to partner with you and want to thank Earth Economics and your funders for doing this work for us pro bono. We're going to be using this analysis for a long time just to show the community and show other partners what the value of our work is. So thanks for highlighting our work and for your partnership.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and it was a pleasure.
For anything else related to our work, you know where to find us, tacomatreefoundation.org. And we're very excited to be in community with all of you. So thank you very much.